She walked into that clinic alive, and someone who claimed to love her made sure she never walked out. Now listen closely, because this part is where it gets scary. A 53-year-old Filipino woman goes in for a breast implant procedure. She thinks she's buying confidence. She thinks she's keeping her man. She thinks she's walking into a safer, better version of herself. But days later, she's dead. And what happens next is the detail that made investigators stop treating this like complications. Because while her family was crying, while people were calling her phone and getting no answers, someone close to her was smiling for a camera. Not at a funeral, not at a hospital, on a trip. Here's the mystery I want you to solve with me as we go. Was this a tragic medical accident, or was it planned from the beginning? Pay attention to these clues because they matter. A rushed appointment that came out of nowhere. A clinic that wanted payment a certain way, a text message that should never exist during surgery, and one photo online that exposed what grief was supposed to hide. In the next minutes, I'm going to walk you through the timeline piece by piece. And I want you to keep one question in your mind. Who benefits the most from her not waking up? And I want you to do something with me right now. Subscribe and stay through the end, because the evidence in this case doesn't arrive all at once. It shows up in pieces. And when those pieces finally lock together, you're going to want someone to talk to about what it means. Before we talk about the clinic, before we talk about the money, you need to understand who Marisol del Rosario really was. Because the way this happened only makes sense when you understand what she was carrying inside. Marisol was 53, Filipina, and the kind of woman people call strong because she never complains. She moved to the United States years ago with the same plan a lot of immigrants have. Work hard, stay focused, build something stable, and give yourself a life you can be proud of. And she did. Marisol wasn't reckless. She wasn't careless. She wasn't chasing attention. She worked steady jobs, saved her money, and kept her life together. She had routines. She had responsibilities. She had people who depended on her family back home, friends who leaned on her, co-workers who trusted her. But the part most people didn't see was what happened when Marisol went quiet at night, because Marisol was warm. The type to send food to your house when you're sick. The type to remember birthdays. The type to say, "I'm fine," even when she wasn't. She wanted love the way some people want. Air simple, steady, real. And lately, she didn't feel chosen. Not because she didn't try, but because she could feel the shift. The little pauses, the longer silences, the way compliments stopped, the way affection started to feel like something she had to earn again. And here's where it gets personal. Marisol had a fear she didn't say out loud: aging. Not because she hated herself, but because she was scared someone else would. She was scared that one day the person she loved would look at her and see someone replaceable. So when she started hearing words like "just a small change, just to boost your confidence, just to look how you feel inside," it didn't land like vanity. It landed like hope. Marisol convinced herself it was a fresh start. A final glow up. One last move to keep her relationship alive and keep herself from being left behind. And that's why this matters, because Marisol didn't walk into that clinic chasing beauty. She walked in chasing reassurance. And someone close to her knew exactly how to use that. And then there was Ethan Crowley. Ethan was 31, young, polished, and the kind of man who knew how to look harmless. Clean haircut, fitted clothes, smooth talk. The type who could walk into a room and make people believe he had good intentions just by smiling at the right time. When Marisol introduced him, most people had the same reaction. They were surprised, but they were also happy for her because Ethan didn't show up looking like trouble. He showed up looking like a fresh chapter. He opened doors. He held her hand. He called her baby in front of people. He acted like she was the luckiest woman in the world. But here's what made Ethan dangerous. He didn't shout. He didn't hit. He didn't insult her the way you expect a cruel man to insult a woman. He praised her. And then quietly rewrote what beautiful was supposed to mean. At first, it sounded sweet. You're gorgeous. You know that, right? Then came the small suggestions. You'd look even better if you tightened just a little. Then the comparison slipped in, always disguised as casual scrolling, a photo on his phone, a model, a celebrity, a younger woman in a video. And Ethan would laugh like it meant nothing and say something like, "Wow, look at her confidence." But he wasn't just scrolling. He was measuring. And Marisol could feel it. Because every compliment Ethan gave her had a little hook attached. Every "you're perfect" came with a quiet reminder that perfection could still be improved. And then he started using pressure that sounded like love. "If you love me, you'll do this." Not yelled, not threatened, said gently like a favor. Like a test, like proof. Marisol would try to laugh it off, but Ethan had a way of turning her discomfort into something she felt guilty about. "Oh, I'm only saying it because I care. I want you to feel confident. I'm trying to help you." He didn't insult her directly. He just planted doubt and called it encouragement. And the red flags didn't come one at a time. They stacked fast. He acted supportive in public but distant in private. He praised her then nudged her insecurities. He said he loved her but kept moving the goalpost of what enough looked like. By the time Marisol started thinking about surgery, it didn't feel like Ethan was forcing her. It felt like she was choosing it. And that's the part that should make you pause. Because when someone can make your insecurity feel like your own idea, they don't need to push you. They just need to point you in the direction they want. And watch you walk there. Marisol didn't wake up one morning and say, "I want surgery." What pushed her there was a moment she couldn't unsee. It happened at a small get-together. Nothing fancy. Just Ethan, Marisol, and a few people they knew. Music low, drinks on the table, everyone laughing like it was a normal night. Then Ethan picked up his phone, tilted the screen toward one of his friends, and chuckled. Marisol didn't hear the first sentence clearly. Too much talking, too many voices, but she heard the second part because Ethan said it a little louder like a joke that deserved a reaction. He smiled and said, "Man, some women really let themselves go. That's why upgrades exist." People laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was easier than making things awkward. Marisol froze with her cup in her hand. She waited for Ethan to look at her and say, "I'm kidding." She waited for him to squeeze her hand under the table. She waited for anything that told her she wasn't the target, but he didn't. He just kept smiling. And Marisol did what a lot of women do when they're hurt in public. She smiled, too. She laughed a little, just enough to survive the moment. But inside, something cracked. That night, when they got home, she went into the bathroom and turned on the light. She stood in front of the mirror longer than usual, not to admire herself, to examine herself, like she was looking for the flaw Ethan was laughing at. Her hands shook as she adjusted her shirt. She turned slightly, looked from the side, then straight on, and in her mind, the argument started. I'm 53. Why am I doing this? I've lived through worse than this. I've built a life. I'm not a child. But then the fear answered back. Because I don't want to lose him. Because I'm tired of feeling like I'm about to be replaced. Because I want to feel wanted again. Over the next few days, the mirror became a habit. Then the phone searches started. At first, it was harmless. Breast implant. Recovery time. Then best clinics near me. Then before and after age 50. Then how to look natural. Her screen filled with glowing ads, perfect results, smiling women, clean white clinic rooms. And words like confidence and new you. And that's how it happened. Not in one dramatic decision, but in small, quiet steps, each one making the next one easier. Until one night, Marisol closed her laptop, stared at her reflection, and whispered the sentence that changed everything. Maybe this is what I need. And Ethan was ready for her to believe that. Marisol didn't search for Blue Harbor aesthetics. Ethan did. One evening, he walked into the condo like he'd solved a problem. He set his laptop on the table, turned the screen toward her, and said almost proudly, found it. The website looked perfect. Bright lighting, clean hallways, smiling staff, beautiful before and after photos. 5-star reviews that read like love letters. Even the wording felt comforting, safe, gentle, trusted. Private. Marisol leaned in, scrolling slowly, letting herself breathe. But then Ethan pointed at the price. See, this is why I like them, he said. Same results, half the cost. Marisol hesitated. Why is it cheaper? Ethan didn't even blink. Because they don't overcharge like those other places. They're just smart. Then he added the line that pushed her forward. We should book it now. That same night, not next month, not after more research, not after talking to her doctor, not after asking friends. Now, Ethan clicked the number and put it on speaker. A woman answered immediately like she'd been waiting for the call. The tone was cheerful, fast, and rehearsed. Ethan did most of the talking. He asked for the earliest appointment. He didn't ask questions about safety. He didn't ask about the surgeon's background. He asked about dates. When Marisol tried to slow things down, maybe we should think about it. Ethan smiled like she was being silly. Babe, you've been wanting to feel better. Do it now. Don't overthink it. 2 days later, they drove to the address. And the first thing Marisol noticed was what wasn't there. No big medical sign. No branding, no clear front entrance that said clinic. Just a plain building with tinted windows and an empty-looking hallway, like an office that had closed years ago, but never bothered to update the outside. Marisol paused near the door. Are you sure this is the place? Ethan squeezed her hand a little too tightly. It's discreet, he said. Privacy. That's how high-end places operate. Inside, the air smelled like cleaning chemicals mixed with something old. The furniture in the waiting area didn't match. The magazines were dated. The desk had a small bell like a cheap hotel, and the woman behind the desk didn't introduce herself properly. She didn't offer water. She didn't explain the process. She slid a clipboard across the counter. Fill this out. The forms felt generic. No detailed risks. No full medical history questions that made sense. Just broad statements and signature lines. Pages that looked copied and recopied. Marisol turned to Ethan. Some of this doesn't even mention implants. Ethan didn't look worried. He looked annoyed. It's standard. Just sign it. Then came the next red flag. Quiet. But loud enough to matter. Payment, cash, no card, no invoice that looked official, no itemized breakdown, just a number written down and a deadline to bring it. When Marisol asked about the doctor, the receptionist gave a vague answer. He's amazing. He's done this for years. No license displayed on the wall. No clear credentials, no proper introduction, just reassurance. And here's what was strangest of all. Ethan never once acted confused. He never asked, why is it like this? He never said, this feels off. He didn't even scan the room like a protective partner would. He acted like he'd been there before. He kept pushing the timeline. Pushing the pace, pushing Marisol to stop thinking and start agreeing. Let's get it done this week, he said. Marisol tried to swallow her fear and told herself she was being nervous, that she was overreacting, that she didn't want to look difficult. So, she kept going. She kept nodding. She kept signing. Because she thought she was about to fix her body, but someone else was fixing her fate. By the time Marisol agreed to the procedure, Ethan didn't celebrate the way a loving partner would. He didn't say, I'm proud of you. He didn't say, we'll take it slow. He moved like a man, checking items off a list. A few days after the clinic visit, Ethan came home with another idea. Before you do surgery, he said, we should get your paperwork straight just in case. Marisol frowned. What paperwork? Ethan kept his voice calm. Like he was being responsible. In benefits, who gets what? It's grown-up stuff. Then he dropped the name of a man Marisol had never heard of. Caleb Rohr, a so-called financial advisor Ethan claimed he trusted. Ethan said Caleb helped high-value clients protect their assets. Marisol didn't love the idea, but Ethan made it sound urgent. It's quick, he said. One meeting, then you can relax, so Marisol went. The office looked professional enough. Clean desk, neat suit, polished smile. Caleb spoke smoothly like every sentence had been practiced. He praised Marisol's discipline, complimented how well she'd built her life, then shifted to a question that landed like a warning. At your age, do you have your beneficiaries fully updated? Marisol blinked. My beneficiaries? Caleb nodded, flipping pages like he'd already decided the answer. If something happens, anything your family could get stuck in delays. We see it all the time. Courts, claims, confusion. You don't want that. Marisol looked at Ethan. He nodded quickly. Almost too quickly. Caleb slid a packet across the desk. A lot of pages, dense wording, lines to initial, lines to sign. Marisol tried to read, but Caleb didn't give her space. He kept talking while she scanned, explaining just enough to make her feel safe, but not enough to make her feel informed. This is standard. This protects you. This avoids stress for your loved ones. Then Caleb paused and pointed with his pen. Here. Just initial. Marisol hesitated. What is this one? Caleb smiled. Beneficiary confirmation. It just makes everything clear. Marisol glanced at Ethan again. He leaned closer. It's fine, babe. Sign it. We're just being smart. And Marisol, trusting her partner, trying not to look paranoid, signed. She didn't know what she had. Just approved. Because what that paperwork actually did was change the direction of money quietly, legally, and fast. Not long after that meeting, another thing happened that looked small on the surface, but mattered later. A cash withdrawal. Not a few hundred, not grocery money. A large amount taken out just days before her procedure. Marisol didn't do it. Ethan did. And here's the detail that should make you pause. The withdrawal didn't match any surgery fee schedule Marisol had seen. It didn't come with a normal receipt trail. It was clean, quick, simple, cash in hand, no questions asked. So now you have three pieces on the table: an advisor who showed up out of nowhere, paperwork Marisol didn't fully understand, and a large cash withdrawal days before she went under anesthesia. And I want you to keep playing detective with me, because if this was just about beauty, why were they moving money like someone was preparing for death? Surgery day arrived quietly. No storm, no warning sign in the sky, just a normal morning that looked like any other. Until you remember, it was Marisol's last. She woke up before her alarm hours before she needed to. The room was still dark. Ethan was asleep beside her, breathing steady, like nothing important was happening. Marisol slipped out of bed slowly and walked to the bathroom. She turned on the light and stared at herself in the mirror. Her face looked tired, not from age, from worry. She tried to smile at her reflection and couldn't hold it. Her hands were cold. Her stomach felt tight. She kept telling herself, "It's routine. People do this every day." But her body didn't believe her. She went to the kitchen and made tea she didn't drink. She sat at the table staring at the cup like it could calm her nerves. Then she picked up her phone and sent a voice note to her closest friend, Celia. Her voice was low, shaky, almost embarrassed. "Hey, I'm heading in for the procedure today. I'm probably just nervous, but if anything happens, check on my sister. Please. Just check on her." She stared at the screen after she sent it, like she regretted it, like she'd said something out loud that she wasn't ready to admit to herself. A few minutes later, Ethan walked in and he looked perfect. Too perfect. He smiled, kissed her forehead, spoke softly. "You're going to do great." His tone was smooth, measured, like he'd practiced the exact words in the exact order. He made breakfast like a caring partner would, but he didn't eat much himself. He kept checking the time. His movements were calm and efficient, like he was running a schedule. Marisol tried to joke to break the tension. "What if I change my mind?" Ethan didn't laugh. He just smiled again, small, controlled. "You won't," he said. "You've come this far." On the drive, Marisol watched the city pass by and tried to breathe. Ethan kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting lightly on her knee. "You're safe," he said, but his eyes weren't on her. They were forward, focused, like he was trying to arrive on time for something important. When they pulled up to Blue Harbor Aesthetics, the building looked even more empty in the morning light. No sign, no welcoming entrance. Just that same quiet doorway and tinted glass that hid what was inside. Marisol paused with her hand on the car door. "Ethan, are you sure?" he answered too quickly. "Yes, inside." The waiting room felt colder than it should have. The receptionist spoke without warmth. No gentle reassurance. No, "How are you feeling?" No comfort. Just paperwork. Just a pen. Just a clipboard. Marisol filled in the blanks with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. Then a woman in scrubs appeared and called her name. Marisol looked at Ethan, and Ethan stood up fast like he'd been waiting for that exact moment. He held her hand, gave her another calm smile, and said the same thing again. "You'll be fine." But it didn't sound comforting anymore. It sounded like a line. Marisol was taken down a narrow hallway into a pre-op room that felt wrong in small ways. The air was cold. The lighting was harsh. And where she expected to see equipment monitors, screens, numbers, there wasn't much. Just a rolling tray, a few wires, a wall clock ticking loud enough to notice. A second staff member walked in, whispered something to the first. Then both of them went quiet when Marisol looked up. Marisol sat on the bed in a thin gown, trying to ignore the fear crawling up her spine. The nurse came closer with an 4 kit. "Small pinch," she said. Marisol watched the needle go in. And felt the sting. Then she felt something else, something colder than the room. Not in her skin, in her gut. Because the staff kept whispering. And Ethan wasn't asking questions. He wasn't hovering the way nervous partners hover. He wasn't demanding updates. He wasn't even trying to look brave for her. He was calm. Calm like someone who already knew how this would end. Marisol turned her head and caught Ethan's face one more time before they started the medication. She wanted to see worry. She wanted to see love. She wanted to see fear. But what she saw was different. The nurse said, "Count backward for me." Marisol swallowed. 10, 9, 8, her vision began to blur. 7, 6. The room stretched and softened at the edges. 5, and then. Right before everything went dark, Marisol saw Ethan's face. Not worried, not scared, relieved. Marisol went to sleep believing she would wake up sore, swollen, but alive. She never opened her eyes again. Less than a few hours later, the story the clinic gave was short, clean, and ready to be accepted. They told Ethan there was an unexpected reaction. They said her heart couldn't handle it. They used the phrase, "People are trained to accept without questions. Cardiac arrest." And then they closed it with the sentence that ends so many cases before they even start. "We tried everything. No long explanation, no clear timeline, no details that made sense, just a neat conclusion." When Ethan was called back into a small room, he didn't stumble. He didn't look dazed. He didn't look like a man who had just lost the person he claimed to love. Marisol's body was covered. Her face was still. She looked like she was resting. And Ethan barely reacted. No shaking. Hands, no tears. No, this can't be happening. He stood there for a moment. Quiet, like he was watching something he'd already seen in his head. Then he asked the question that changed how people remembered this moment. Not, "Can you save her?" Not, "What happened?" Not, "Let me call her sister." Ethan looked at the staff and said, "So, what's the next step?" The nurse started explaining paperwork. Ethan nodded like they were discussing a delivery schedule. A death certificate, a release form, a number to call for transport. And then came another detail that didn't sit right. Ethan didn't demand an autopsy. He didn't ask for a second opinion. He didn't ask to move her to a hospital just in case. He just accepted the clinic's version and moved straight to logistics. He signed where they told him to sign. He made calls in the hallway in a calm voice. And when someone said, "We're sorry," Ethan answered with a flat "Okay," that's what made the room feel colder than before. Not the death itself, but how easily it was handled, because grief usually has. Wait. It makes people slow. It makes them messy. It makes them ask questions. But Ethan acted like the questions were already answered. And when Marisol's family got the call, they heard the official explanation, complications. They were told it was tragic, but normal. But there were cracks in that story from the start. The timing didn't line up. The clinic didn't provide clear records. And the people who were supposed to be devastated weren't behaving like it. And right there, between the clinic's smooth explanation and Ethan's calm response, something shifted because the death sounded like an accident. But it didn't feel like one. 2 days after Marisol died, her family was still moving like people in shock. Her sister was calling funeral homes with a trembling voice. Her cousins were trying to gather documents. Friends were sending prayers and asking the same question over and over. How did this happen so fast? And while they were doing all of that, Ethan was already somewhere else, not at a family meeting, not at a church, not sitting in the quiet grief he claimed was too painful. He was out traveling. And the reason anyone found out wasn't because he told the family the truth. It was because the internet did what it always does. It noticed a woman named Tina Alvarez, a coworker of Marisol's cousin, was scrolling on her lunch break. She was looking through posts tagged at a popular weekend spot near the beach. Just random photos, food, drinks, sunsets, happy people. Then she stopped because in the corner of one video, she recognized a face she'd seen just days earlier in a family photo shared online. It was Ethan. He wasn't in black. He wasn't hollowed. He wasn't walking like someone who just lost his wife. He was smiling, laughing, actually. And it got worse when Tina watched again because Ethan wasn't alone. He was sitting too close with a young woman. Not a friend's casual closeness. Not we're in a crowded place closeness. The kind of closeness you don't show if you're trying to respect the dead. Her hand brushed his arm. His hand rested on her thigh. Their heads leaned together like this was normal for them. Tina replayed it 3 times, her stomach turning more each time. Then she did what any reasonable person would do when something feels wrong. She took a screenshot, she zoomed in, and she sent it to Marisol's cousin with a message that was only one sentence. Isn't this Marisol's husband? Within minutes, that image was bouncing from phone to phone inside the family group chat. Marisol's sister opened it and froze because she was still planning burial arrangements. And Ethan was out living like Marisol had never existed. But the most disturbing part wasn't even the smile. It was who he was smiling with. That young woman wasn't some random stranger. She was someone connected to Marisol's circle. Someone who should not have been in Ethan's arms like that. And right then in that one image, the family felt it. Marisol didn't just die. Marisol was removed. And that picture didn't just expose disrespect, it exposed motive. When Marisol's family walked into the station with that photo, they expected to be dismissed because grief can look messy. Families get angry. People accuse each other. Police hear it all the time. But the officer who took the report didn't roll her eyes. She leaned in. Her name was Detective Renee Calder. And Calder had a reputation in the department for one thing. She didn't get distracted by emotions. She followed patterns. Calder looked at the photo for 10 seconds, then asked one question that caught everyone off guard. Who benefits from her death? That's where this stopped being a sad story and became a case. Calder started simple. She didn't chase rumors. She chased paper. Calder searched Blue Harbor aesthetics in the state licensing system. The clinic name didn't match the registered business listed at the address. The location was filed under a different type of business category, not a medical facility the way it presented online. That alone was enough for Calder to sit up straighter, because if the clinic wasn't legally operating the way it claimed, then everything about Marisol's death needed a second look. Next, Calder pulled the surgeon's history, not the glossy biography from the website, the actual record, complaints, disciplinary actions, prior civil claims, patients who said they were rushed, pressured, and ignored. And then something worse. Calder found other cases connected to the same name and the same circle of staff. Older patients, routine procedures, sudden deaths written off as complications. Nothing proven yet, but the pattern was starting to form. Then Calder asked the family a question most people don't expect right after a death. Did she recently change any beneficiaries or policies? The family didn't know. So Calder requested documents. And when the insurance timeline came back, Calder's face hardened. A major change right before surgery. Not long ago, not years ago, right before. That's a red flag in any investigation, because it suggests planning. After that, Calder checked Marisol's financial records. She wasn't looking for small purchases. She was looking for moves that didn't fit Marisol's habits. And there it was, a large cash withdrawal days before the procedure. Not made by Marisol, made by Ethan. No clear reason, no normal explanation, no traceable payment chain. Cash is quiet. Cash disappears. Cash is what people use when they don't want to trail. Calder circled that withdrawal like it was screaming. Now Calder needed something that couldn't be explained away with excuses. So she pulled what she could from nearby CCTV footage. Traffic cameras along routes, phone records and location data, clinic entry logs, and piece-by-piece connections started appearing. Who called who? Who met who? Who was at the clinic when they claimed they weren't? Who moved money when no one was supposed to be thinking about money? Calder pinned everything to a timeline, not feelings, not opinions. Dates, times, proof. And once that timeline was built, one thing became clear. Marisol didn't just have surgery. A sequence happened around her. And the more Calder mapped it out, the more it looked less like bad luck and more like a setup. Because when a clinic has licensing problems, a surgeon has a trail. Insurance changes happen right before a procedure. Cash gets pulled days before, and the husband is smiling on a trip right after. That's not one coincidence. That's a pattern. And Detective Renee Calder was about to pull the thread hard enough to expose what was really underneath. At first, Detective Renee Calder treated Marisol's case as one possible murder dressed up as a medical accident. One woman, one clinic, one suspicious husband. But then Calder did what most people don't do. She asked a bigger question. If this was planned, has it happened before? So, she widened the search, not just by names, but by patterns. Calder pulled records of recent deaths connected to Cosmetic procedures in the same area, cases that were quickly closed labeled as unexpected reactions, cardiac events, rare complications, and what she found changed the temperature of the investigation. Because Marisol wasn't alone, Calder started seeing the same type of victim again and again. Older patients, usually over 51. Procedures marketed as routine implants, lifts, lipo, tummy tucks, deaths that happened Fast, sometimes during surgery, sometimes right after way, and in the background, money moving quickly. Afterward. Not small money, big payouts, policies that suddenly became active. Beneficiaries quietly updated, family members collecting and disappearing back into normal life with no questions asked. At first, it looked like tragedy. The kind of risk people accept when they go under anesthesia. But then Calder noticed something that made her stop calling it risk. The same clinic names kept appearing, or the same addresses under different business names. The same staff rotated in and out. The same consultation style, fast, rushed, reassuring, and heavy on pushing a date. And the same quiet detail in multiple cases. Cash, cash deposits, cash withdrawals, cash payments. Every time Calder lined the cases up side by side, the similarities got harder to ignore. And that's when the case stopped being Marisol versus Ethan. It started looking like a system, a service, like something people could access if they had the money and the nerve. Calder wrote 3 words across her evidence board. Who connects them? Because a clinic doesn't find these families by accident. Someone guides them. Someone points them to the right place. Someone makes the introduction. Calder suspected a network. With roles, simple roles like a business, a recruiter, someone who identifies the right victim and the right person close to the victim, a clinic that can operate quietly and avoid overseer, a medical insider, someone who knows how to make a death look like complications and how to keep the paperwork clean enough to pass at first glance. And once you see it like that, you can't unsee it. Because now, Marisol's case wasn't just about love and betrayal. It was about a method, a way to remove someone without a gun. Without a struggle, without obvious violence, just a consent form, a needle, a death certificate, and a payout. Calder looked at Marisol's timeline again. Ethan pushing the surgery, the clinic choice, the money moves, the quick celebration afterward, and she realized something chilling. Marisol wasn't just unlucky. She may have been selected. And if that was true, then the question wasn't who killed Marisol. The question became, how many people paid for this before her, and how many will try again after? Detective Renee Calder didn't rush the arrest. She let Ethan think he was safe because when people believe they've won, they get careless. 2 weeks after Marisol's death, Ethan was at the airport with a carry-on bag and a calm face moving through the terminal like a man starting a new chapter. No black suit, no family beside him. No sign of mourning, just a boarding pass, just forward motion. He reached the security line, scanned his phone, and stepped ahead like nothing in his life had changed. That's when Calder made her move. 2 officers came from the side. Another stepped in behind him. Ethan Crowley. Ethan turned with a polite smile like he thought they were lost. Yes. The officer's voice stayed steady. Sir, we need you to come with us. Ethan blinked, confused on purpose. Why? What's this about? Calder stepped into his view. And when Ethan saw her badge, his smile stayed, but his eyes changed. What is this? He asked louder. Now. I didn't do anything. Calder didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She simply said, you're being detained in connection with the death of Marisol del Rosario. Ethan gave the performance you'd expect. He laughed a little, shook his head, looked around for sympathy. This is crazy. She died during surgery. They told me it was complications. Calder nodded once. Yeah, that's what the clinic said. Then she leaned in slightly and started laying the case out piece by piece like she was reading from a receipt. Here's what we know, Ethan. Days before the procedure, you withdrew a large amount of cash. Ethan opened his mouth, called her, didn't let him. Right before surgery, Marisol's paperwork shows a beneficiary change that you pushed her to sign. His jaw tightened, and the clinic you insisted on, Blue Harbor Aesthetics, has licensing issues, and a registration trail that doesn't match what the website claims. Ethan's face started losing color. Calder didn't stop, and 2 days after she died, you weren't grieving. You were traveling. Smiling, caught on camera. She pulled out a printed photo and held it up. The same image Marisol's family brought in. Ethan stared at it, then looked away fast like the photo burned. Calder's voice stayed calm, but every word hit harder. And then there's your message trail. Ethan snapped back defensive. What messages? I didn't. Calder raised a hand, cutting him off. You deleted them. But deletion isn't magic. It's not a shredder. It's a delay. She watched his throat move as he swallowed. Then she delivered the line that ended his act. So, I'll ask you one simple question, Ethan. If you were an innocent husband, why were you planning your next move while your wife was dying? Ethan didn't answer. He couldn't because this wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. This was a timeline, and his fingerprints were on every step of it. The officers moved in. Turn around. Ethan stiffened. Tried one last weak push. You can't do this. You have nothing. Metal clicked, handcuffs locked, and the moment those cuffs closed, the airport noise faded behind. The rush of consequence. Police lights flashed outside the terminal. People stared, phones came out. Someone whispered, what did he do? Ethan was walked through the crowd head up, jaw clenched, still trying to look like the victim. But he wasn't the victim. Marisol was. And as the cameras caught the arrest, the story was already turning into headlines fast, loud, and impossible to bury. Because the trap didn't just snap shut on Ethan, it snapped shut on everything he thought he could hide. When Ethan was arrested, Marisol's family didn't feel relief right away. They felt something heavier. Because an arrest doesn't bring a person back. And when the shock wore off, the grief turned into questions that hurt more than silence. Marisol's sister sat in her living room with a photo of Marisol on her lap and kept saying the same thing over and over. How did we miss the signs? She replayed every conversation. Every time Marisol brushed off concerns. Every time she said, I'm fine. Every time she defended Ethan. With that quiet hope in her voice, and the guilt hit the family in waves because they didn't just lose her. They felt like they failed to protect her. Outside the courthouse, relatives cried into microphones. Some were angry, some were numb, and one cousin said something that stayed with everyone listening. She thought she was fixing her body, but we didn't know she was walking into a plan. Inside the courtroom, the story changed. Not the story Ethan told his stayed the same, but the story the evidence told became sharper with every hearing. Ethan's defense strategy was simple and repeated like a chant. It was an accident. She chose the surgery. She signed the forms. They're turning grief into a crime. He wanted the jury to see him as a man being blamed for a tragedy he didn't control. But then the clinic staff started talking. One employee came forward first, quiet at first, then more direct when the pressure of perjury became real. The statement wasn't dramatic. It was worse than dramatic. It was practical. They spoke about rushed consultations, about special cases. About instructions to keep records light, about cash, about who asked questions and who didn't. And when the prosecution brought the timeline to the front of the court, money first, paperwork next, surgery, death, celebration, the room went still. Because accidents don't usually come with preparation. Then the prosecutor stood up, faced the jury, and framed it in one clear sentence. This wasn't surgery. This was a staged death. She didn't rely on big words. She relied on simple facts stacked in order. The clinic Ethan insisted on had legal problems. A major financial change happened close to the procedure. Cash moved days before Marisol went under. Ethan's behavior after her death didn't match grief. It matched relief. And the message trail revealed planning, not panic. The prosecutor pointed toward Ethan and said plainly, he didn't walk into that clinic as a husband, hoping she'd wake up. He walked in as a man, expecting she wouldn't. Marisol's family sat in the front row, listening to every word, breaking apart quietly. Not because they didn't believe it, but because believing it meant accepting the worst truth of all. Marisol didn't just die. She was used. And by the time the court began closing in on what really happened, the question wasn't whether Ethan's story sounded nice. The question was whether the evidence left room for innocence. And for the first time since Marisol's death, her sister stopped asking how did we miss it and started asking something else. How many other people didn't see it coming either? Before we end this case, I want you to take something real from it because Marisol's story isn't only about what happened to her. It's also about what can happen when love, pressure, and money collide. If you or someone you care about is ever considering cosmetic surgery, watch for these warning signs. Not one of them alone proves danger, but when they start showing up together, you need to slow down and ask hard questions. 1. Pressure to do it quickly. If someone keeps rushing your timeline, do it now. Don't think too much. Book it this week. Pause. Time. Pressure is often used to stop you from checking details. 2. Secretive cash payments. Legit clinics can accept cash. But if they push for it, avoid receipts or keep the process vague, treat that like an alarm. 3. Unlicensed or unclear clinic setup, no signage, no clear credentials, no proper patient process, no proper documentation. If the place feels more like a back office than a medical facility, don't talk yourself out of your instincts. 4. New insurance policies or beneficiary changes close to surgery. If major paperwork suddenly becomes urgent right before a procedure, ask why. Read everything. Get a second opinion. Bring someone you trust who isn't emotionally involved. A partner who is too calm after tragedy. People grieve differently. Yes. But when someone treats death like paperwork and timelines when they move on fast, make plans fast and ask, what's next, instead of, how did this happen? Pay attention. Because this case wasn't only about a clinic. It was about a woman who wanted to feel loved again. A woman who wanted to feel wanted again. And here's the truth that hurts the most. Marisol wanted to feel chosen. And that's exactly what made her vulnerable. If this story disturbed you, don't scroll subscribe right now because the next case might be even closer to real life than you expect. Drop your location in the comments and say, I'm still here. If you made it to the end, I want to know who stayed with Marisol's story all the way through. And tell me this. Do you think cases like this are rare or just rarely investigated?